Issue 151. We start out with Kenta Boren and Sonic in the small universe's Mystic Mountain, home of the genies, which Sonic doesn't see as welcoming since it's just a small desert oasis. I'm glad they're establishing that the genies have their own home because that genie kinda came out of nowhere last time. Kenta Boren explains that it's normally the duty of the Grand Vizier to take the chosen children to the Mystic Mountain. Since that's all he knows, Sonic's suspicious. Then they hear a scream and a giant crab attacks, and Sonic moves all around it at the speed of sound, throwing dust up, until it's trapped on top of a high, narrow mountain with a hole beneath it. Later, Kenta Boren briefly suffers from the heat that Sonic's for some reason fine in despite being covered in fur. Then he takes some medicine that I'm suspicious of to feel better. They all reach the gates to the mountain, and after the heroes notice they look scared, the gates open as if they were expected, and everyone goes in, with Sonic being suspicious some more, as if he's been given a copy of the script ahead of time and vaguely remembers it. They all get greeted by some evil green genie spirits who tell the chosen children that their destiny awaits. Sonic says suspiciously that he'd like to know what's going on here before letting the kids get taken away. I'm assuming they're being used as a sacrifice. Sonic says that the genies look more like ghosts, which is what I was thinking. Sonic is told that the mystic genies, that's redundant, and the people of Shinazar have been sharing a ritual for generations. Sonic is thrown down a bone ladder that he grabs, he's threatened by ghosts and feels like his blood's turned to ice, and seems to get pulled away by ghosts while looking scared. Then he's back with Kenta Boren, and he's told that he was briefly with the lost souls of the Mystic Mountain, and if he questions the inexplicably secretive jerks again, he'll be sent back there forever. The kids are kidnapped for a transformation ritual, and it turns out the medicine Kenta Boren was given turned him back into Eggman. A depressing and bullshit end to the story. In the next story, the minute Sonic and Techno go into the Trickster zone, he mocks them in a recording with a floating monitor, and says that with the riches and technology at his disposal, he can outsmart them at every turn. They walk along a train track while hearing a riddle, and see some floating giant toys, including a Winnie the Pooh toy. Techno reveals that her hacking scanner has told her that the Trickster inherited his fortune from his father, who designed some successful toys. It's nice to get a little backstory on him. Predictably, a train goes after them. Techno gets pulled out of harm's way and says that not only are the toys dangerous, but she's lost her Techno box. So that's what the scanner was called? We should have been told about that the first time we saw it. Sonic's spin attacks the giant knight, making him crash into the bear toy, and after Sonic solves the riddle, it turns out the Trickster used shape-changing technology to look like Techno, while the real Techno was kidnapped after hacking into the secret zone. The Trickster says Sonic's won, so he's got 10 seconds to take the Metropolis door and leave, or else he'll be trapped here forever. Fortunately, he was nice enough to let Sonic leave with Techno, and they return home with Techno saying that the Trickster is history, even though he's still alive. Well, that was kind of unsatisfying ending. He wasn't arrested or anything. The next story starts out with Tails flying his plane in Polar Zone, the furthest north of Mobius. Huh, so it has an original name, unlike an Archie where it's just called the Arctic. Tails is looking for an escaped bank robber. He fails to notice him because he blended in with the snow as a polar bear and shoots down Tails' plane. Tails jumps out of the plane, flying out of it, and after some talk about how he hid the money he stole, his ray gun hits something that causes an avalanche. He briefly gets buried in it, and Tails inexplicably expresses sympathy and complains that he'll never find the money now. The polar bear gets out of the snow completely uncrushed, not appreciating his pity, and after he tells Tails that he's fighting in his habitat now, Tails wakes up with a text box saying soon at the corner, and the bank robber claws right there, meaning that he didn't try to kill him when he was unconscious. For some reason. I guess he wanted him to be awake to die? Tails wakes up on an ice floe that's melting and surrounded by water with some rope around him. And because he thinks Tails is done for anyways, Claus tells him that he hid the money in a duvet, whatever that is, because he knew the law would never suspect a polar bear would want to keep warm in the winter. As Tails falls into the cold water, which should give him hypothermia in seconds, a Deus Ex Machina happens as a penguin moving out of nowhere saves him, as I wonder why he didn't just spin his tails underwater to swim out of it. He gets out of the water and explains that since he suspected he'd have some trouble with Claus, he had asked his friend to come along to help. He never really asked his friends to come along with him on his solo adventures, so it's a good thing he thought to do this. We should have been told about this from the start so that his rescue wouldn't feel like a deus ex machina. It turns out the Penguin is the stand-up comedian who is making fun of Eggman. And as I wonder why the polar bear is just lying there instead of trying to beat them up, a police helicopter shows up since Tails also had the good sense to call it ahead of time. The story ends with them being arrested while lampshading that puns suck, making them feel all the more out of place since they're making us relate to a bank robber over the heroes. And then a reprint. The first story is by Nigel Kitching, and it's a depressing one because Sonic and Kenta Boren get led into a cave of ghosts who kidnap some misguided children, and then it turns out the medicine Kenta Boren was given for the heat turns him into Eggman. How though? Did the medicine contain all of the world's evil and the power of the 7 Chaos Emeralds? Grimer never replicated that experiment. It's so arbitrary. This is really why, if they wanted to have a Robotnik back, they should have just taken over Kenta Boren permanently. That's what I assumed was gonna happen. But no. I mean, who cares? Was anyone really attached to Kenta Boren? Nobody had any friendship moments with him. Everyone just talked to him like a computer. The second story is by Jim Alexander, and it's a story with off-putting art where the Trickster wastes Sonic's time with riddles. It's creative, having them in a toy-filled zone, and it's good that there's a twist where he disguised himself as Techno pointlessly while the real Techno was kidnapped. But the ending was disappointing. The final story was by Lou Stringer and was about Tails beating a bank robber he chased down to the Arctic polar zone, because after he wakes up on a melting ice floe tied up instead of killed while he was unconscious for some reason, that idiocy is Claus's downfall, because it turns out Tails had called for help off-screen on the way here, and a penguin comedian saves him from drowning. Also, he's not freezing to death after falling into that icy cold water, which would have been good to make us feel sorry for him. And with Claus having told Tails about where he hid the money since he thought he'd drown anyways, and I guess he wanted to brag, the police helicopter shows up conveniently too. It makes sense for Tails to have called for these guys for help ahead of time, but he never calls for help before his solo adventures. Why not just show us him doing that at the start? It's better than it feeling like the writer wrote himself into a corner and then made something up after the fact. Though I'm aware that not all stories are literally thought of from the beginning to end. With the way I write, I have a concept which is generally like in the middle or the end of the story, and then I'm like, oh great, now I have to write the beginning leading up to it. So that might be how the story was written, where maybe the writer had the idea to have the penguin and helicopter show up all along, but it doesn't feel like that.